everybody. This is Marina, your podcast host at Unbossed. Here we go. At Unbossed, I interview amazing women in underrepresented fields. There is so much women power in the world that I want to provide these women a platform to tell their story. Please connect with us at www.unbossed.io, and please consider supporting by sharing, liking, and commenting the podcast. Tell all your Netflix friends and family about it. Submit a recommendation for our guest. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app and YouTube. Donate by clicking on the anchor link and help me continue to deliver your content. I hope you enjoy, and welcome to the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Unbossed podcast. This month, October, is going to be all about imposter syndrome. And to further research this topic, I interviewed the author, innovator, leader, facilitator, communicator, and mentor, Lauren Valbert. She is actually just wrote a book called Imposter, Dismantle the Stories You Tell Yourself and Overcome Imposter Syndrome. We're going to be talking about the book and about her life. Let's tune in. I'm headed to meet Lauren at the train station, and as I do this, I reflect on what does it mean to have imposter syndrome.
1 minute.
1 minute?
1 minute.
Imposter syndrome is defined as a psychological occurrence in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Despite external evidence of their competence, those experiencing this phenomenon do not believe they deserve their success or luck.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter?
Imposter.
Why is it pronounced impostor and not imposter?
It's imposter. You're pronouncing it wrong. So
It's
yeah.
imposter?
Imposter.
Got it. I myself have experienced a fair amount of imposter syndrome throughout my career, and I feel like I still do experience imposter syndrome sometimes, especially when I am encountered with big challenges. I will talk more about my experiences with imposter syndromes. Here I'm meeting Lauren at the train station. Listen. It's the film crew.
Hello.
Hi. Nice to see you. This is all B-roll.
Howdy.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you again.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
to see you.
We're headed back to my house from the train station, and as we converse about imposter syndrome, we realize that it's everywhere, right? Whether it is Lauren writing a book or me doing my podcast, sometimes we feel imposter syndrome in the most random place. So we decided to do this interview in two parts. The first part is going to be about Lauren and talking about the book and imposter syndrome and the research that she's done. And then there's a part that we decided to do outside. It was a beautiful day in Rotterdam. And this is the first part we're going to talk about, where we talk about being an American in the Netherlands. We talk about her growing up and what brought her to where she's at now. Tune in. You're an American in Europe?
Yes.
How is that?
Where do I begin? Yeah, I've been here for now coming up on 23 years. It'll be 23 years at the end of October. It's on the surface, you can live as an American in Europe pretty easily, especially Northern Europe. They respect Americans. They respect the attitude, the work ethic, and everything. Of course, you know, they think Americans are too loud and too opinionated, but in general, there's a lot of, you know, appreciation and respect. But then you get into the deeper levels, and the deeper levels are, you have to navigate some heavy cultural differences, things that you're not aware of on the surface. It's interesting, actually, because the last place I lived in America before moving to the Netherlands is Seattle, and Seattle is very similar in a lot of ways to Amsterdam, actually. In Seattle, everybody's known everyone since kindergarten, and they don't make new friends very easily.
Oh,
and
hashtag no new friends.
No new friends. And so, it's very hard to kind of break into a friend group or, make new friends when you move to Seattle. And I had that experience. I was there for 7 years and only really started to have friends once I had colleagues, once I started working with people. I had the same experience here. The Dutch tend to make friends in kindergarten or very young, and then they keep their group of friends. And the first question they generally tend to ask me when I first moved here was, "And when are you moving back?" Not in a rude way, not like "fuck off," rude, move back, but in a way of like, "I'm not going to invest in you if you're only here for a year."
I asked Lauren, how is business different in Netherlands versus America?
Yeah, the speed of business is probably the biggest kind of cultural difference when you move here from a business standpoint. Europeans just don't feel nearly the business pressure to move quickly that they do in America.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe. It is a beautiful thing from the standpoint of quality of life.
Yes.
Once it's 5:30 or 6, people go home.
Yeah.
You're not going to get email responses. It's going to be the next day. Just let it go. It's going to be the next day. That's changing. That is changing because a lot of people here now are working for international organizations, and they are expected to be online for stuff that happens in the U.S. later, etc. But in general, business happens between 8:30 and 5:30, and that's it.
9:30, 10.
Yeah, maybe. I was being generous.
And they have a late start here.
Yeah, they do actually. So the more you hype it, the less valid it seems to them, and that was a hard lesson to learn because I remember I moved here. I was moved here for a job. With a PR agency that was based in Seattle. And in the first 6 months, man, I learned it hard. It was just literally, doors in my face. You sound like you're full of shit. You're just selling me, blah, blah, blah. And so after about 6 months, I got to learn, how to be realistic in business. Don't promise everything. Don't say yes to everything. Be realistic on what you can deliver and what you can achieve, all that stuff. And I remember my boss came over from America after about 6-7 months and sat in on meetings with me. And I was like, "Oh no, we can't do that, but we can do, what we can do is." And we walked to the meeting. He's like, "All you said was no. All you said was that we couldn't do stuff." And I'm like, I've learned that's the only way to get them to, to trust you.
Yes.
And to want to do business.
To understand the boundaries.
Right.
To get to those boundaries. To get to the no. I think there's a book about that.
Yeah.
Get to the no, and then from there is an opportunity. You wrote about that.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Get to the no. And
I really feel like, again, my experience in business is mostly with Northern European people, but Northern European people, no is an opening bid.
Yeah.
It's not a closing bid.
Yeah.
Americans almost never say no.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Oh yeah, totally, sounds great," and then ghost you. They'll never say no.
Yeah.
Europeans are like, "Nope," and then wait for you to come back with some more stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that Americans need to really. It's very jarring to them because they're like, "Oh God, they said no." I'm like, "Oh no, but it means." Come back with a different thing.
Tell me more.
So that's a very big cultural difference, and that you have to just kind of navigate and get through.
Listen to Lauren speaking about imposter syndrome growing up.
I grew up on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, near Philadelphia, and I was extremely loud, and I was extremely chaotic. I had
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That is hard to believe.
Oh yeah.
Knowing you now.
Oh wow. I had undiagnosed ADD.
Okay.
ADHD at the time, and so I was tall and weird and loud and creative as hell, and everything was a play. I wanted to act things out all the time and dance and sing, and I was performing all the time.
Nice.
And just really was high energy.
And then?
I got that beaten out of me, actually, really a lot, because we moved around a lot growing up, and I was bullied a lot. And that's also why I really, learned the effect of bullying on people and the imposter syndrome that it gives you. I really thought it was me. I thought I was the fucked up one. I really thought I was the screwed up one for a very long time. And then it has taken me a long, long time to realize that my weirdness is the best thing about me.
Yeah.
But that's only been in the last 14 years or so that I've really figured that out.
Like moving around for me, I don't know if you had this experience, but when it interestingly enough, I don't know if I've ever shared this on the podcast, but I lived in Europe, in Italy, and then in Dominican Republic. And because of the racism in Italy, I was never considered to be a cute girl or the hot girl or whatever. Not that that mattered, but I'm just saying
of course it matters.
That was my that was my perspective, right? I was not the one to have the boyfriend or the first kiss, right? In my group of friends, I was always the one to not get dates and things like that. And being in Dominican Republic, I was considered the popular girl or the cute girl and the hot girl and the ones that the guys were chasing around. And I say that's not to boast myself. That's not the point. The point is like moving around, I realized that like people are full of shit and they don't know anything about me.
This is it. This is it.
And I was like, how I being the same person,
right?
Oh, that's the way. How I being the same person get so many different opinions about myself.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not going to believe any of them.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic learning. Meanwhile, I was always the freak, so I never got to experience the popular.
You didn't travel far enough culturally.
Right, yes. So, I was always, it was pretty much unanimous in the fact that I was freaky. And what's interesting about it actually is I hated school before college. I loved college, but up until high school, I was bullied. I was very unpopular. I had my art, my acting to kind of escape to and everything. And then I moved so far away. I just got out of that area and I went to Europe and I've never looked back. And I think I'm hugely glad that I kind of pushed me away. My brother, super popular, captain of the football team. Had lots of friends in high school, very popular, lives 15 minutes away from where he went to high school, where we went to high school. I think there's an entire book in, just in that. Yes. Because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I kind of feel like the more that you did not fit in pre-college experience, the more you are almost forced to define for yourself who you are and what you want to be.
I feel that a lot. Yeah.
And so I as an adult, looking back, I'm now, glad that I was pushed to get away in that way, get away from kind of a high school self. But at the time it sucked. It was terrible. But yeah. And then I went to college and I was like, oh my God, you mean me being weird is a great thing? Yes. And like, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. I have, skills?
Yeah, I have skills and I can like learn things and nobody thinks I'm a nerd for wanting to learn. Yeah, all of that. I went through all the fields. Yeah.
That's really great. I think like I had a similar experience in terms of like you said, like because I felt like I've never fit in anywhere. I was forced to make my own, island or something, or find my place. Right. And even now, I feel like no place is my place. My place is where I'm at. So I make my place wherever I am at.
Right. As long as that works for you, that's great.
Yes.
I mean, that can flip on you and become very lonely. If you let it. Oh
no, I don't mean it in a lonely way. I mean it in like almost empowering. Like you can make any place your own. In that way.
Well, I mean, you have moved countries now.
I have.
So
I've moved many countries.
Right. I guess yes. Most recently, you have moved countries, and do you feel like that you're making your home here?
My home, like I said, my home is where I'm at. Right. So if I'm here, it feels like home. And at the same time, I also see like other places could be my home. So I am all open about home.
And I think that is what they call the third culture kid syndrome. where once you've lived, especially really different places growing up, you no longer feel tied to any particular place.
I don't.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
I never heard about that.
Oh, yeah. Third culture kid, I think it's called.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because you did it growing up as well as I. Yeah. So I had no issue leaving the U.S. at all because I had never felt, there was no place that was home to me in the U.S. And I just wanted to go to a place where, you know, the outside matched my inside a lot more than it did in the U.S. And I found it here. You know, that's what I found. I found like, oh, in general, you know, very generally, the social system, the way that people behave, their belief systems are generally aligned to mine. And that feels like home to me.
That feels nice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It doesn't, I can't live, I don't understand cultures where people are judged on their outsides. I don't fundamentally, I mean, I know that sounds, I'm a white person, so that sounds like bullshit, but I really don't, I don't understand it. I can't grasp it, why people would behave that way. I guess, I mean, you know, I was judged on my outside as much as there was no racism. Obviously, I'm white. But, you know, I was a freakish, tall, you know, hyper child. And so I did get judged. And I would never, I cannot imagine inflicting that on anyone else.
Yeah, kids are hard. Kids are so mean,
and it's only getting worse. I thank God that I grew up not in a time with social media.
You moved a lot around the States growing up, and you were weird in your own way, fantastic, doing your own thing. Talk to me about like growing up, like your parents and your influence, and maybe how does it reflect into today and the work that you do, maybe.
So my mother was, she stayed at home through most of my growing up, but she was they were both very politically active, worked on a lot of Democratic candidates' campaigns. And my mother was very, very active in the NOW movement, which the National Organization of Women, trying to pass the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, which was very significant in the 70s. Up until the 70s.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It was not even possible for a woman to have have her own checking account.
I remember. I remember reading about it.
Yeah. You're too young to remember that. But, you know, when I was born and like for the first few years of my being alive, you know, women really hardly ever worked out of the home when they had children, unless they had to, couldn't have their own checking accounts, had to have a checking account in the name of their father or their husband, no joke, in America.
Yes.
You know, didn't have credit, didn't have any quite literal bank credit, did not have any of the financial and economic tools. And so there was this piece of legislation called the Equal Rights Amendment that they were trying to pass that would give women a lot of the same rights that men already had. And it was a hard fight. And so my mother was 100% focused on this and very politically active and was a first wave feminist, and first wave feminists believed there is no difference between men and women. We should all act the same. We should, you know, you should strive to be as tough and as strong as a man.
You're right.
And it was a time that needed to, you needed to be tough and strong, you know, to compete with men. But then that's why you saw leaders like Margaret Thatcher and all this stuff being like very tough, very male, very, you know, because this was this belief of like, in order to compete, you needed to be more male than the men.
Yeah. And, you know, like part of me grew up in corporate, we've experienced the women that are now maybe in leadership ranks that do still act this way. And thankfully for us, they have been able to get to the point where they can be aware enough to open doors and let us not be that.
Right.
But there was that moment where that was needed, perhaps. It had to happen.
You had to be more male than men for men to even be able to see you at all. And so, you know, but that's the way I grew up. So the great news about that is I was raised incapable of understanding why there would be any difficulty for me to get any job or do whatever the hell I wanted. You know what I mean? Like in this very strange way. So when I actually started my career, I was like, what do you mean I'm a woman and that means I can't, what? Like I couldn't process.
You were confused.
Why it was weird and why people were, there was discrimination, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand. My father was a chemical engineer and taught me scientific inquiry and critical thinking. I mean, both of them were good at really teaching me critical thinking, and that has set up everything in my life. I think the ability to say, but is this true?
Yeah.
But is this true?
Where's the evidence?
Where's the evidence?
Yeah.
Where's the evidence? And my father really drilled into me the fact that if there is no evidence, there's no reason to believe in it, which he took to the extreme because he was an atheist, and I have moved away from the sort of extreme. I mean, atheism is in itself a kind of fundamentalism because it believes, it's like no evidence, so nothing. And I moved away from that. But the good news, the good thing that I got out of that is that spirit of inquiry of like, if there's not evidence, then it's up for debate.
Then it's an opinion.
Yeah, then it's an opinion. Then it's an opinion. Then we cannot make any final statements about it. And I think so much of the problems in society today are because we have moved away from teaching children critical thinking skills and the ability to really question everything that they're taught and that they see and that they learn. It was very, very convenient societally for a while for people not to be critical thinkers, but that is how fascism happens.
Yes.
Because, when people automatically take what you're telling as the truth, you can control them.
Correct.
And that is how people have been controlled.
Yes.
And so I think that they're reaping what they sowed in a way they didn't anticipate. I'm speaking specifically of the American government when I say that.
We were all referring to it inside.
Right. But you're even seeing it here as well. It's not, Europe is not immune to, that kind of lack of critical thinking amongst certain people. It's when you're exploiting people's lack of critical thinking skills, again, not that they can't operate that way, but they've never been taught, and fear, because the world is changing. You can make them do anything.
Yes.
And that's where we are seeing the problems now.
Yeah.
And so I am really grateful that my parents taught me real critical thinking skills and enabled me to do that. And so it is really a great thing to not only question your own beliefs, but also be in relationships with people who will debate with you, who will call you into, who will say, but why do you believe that?
Yes.
What is that based on?
Yeah.
Because that is the thing that makes us all grow.
Yeah. The beautiful thing that you've mentioned a few times about parenting, I think, as well, is that I think children have, when there is an environment that allows for it, that have the innate ability to reflect all those things back to you.
Right. Yes.
And as a mom, I can tell you, my children are the best at pointing out all my holes and my flaws, and I have to stare at them in the face and reflect on those through them as a mirror, right? And have to I'm presented with myself almost through their eyes.
Yes.
Which has been an experience in its own.
Yes. And that is a core part of a child's development, is defining the world around them. And actually, it's a key part specifically of development away from the dependence on the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Here we talk about working on yourself.
So growing up in your career, was that something that you were aware of? Imposter syndrome, you had the feeling of being weird, or was that part of your progression as a professional?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's very black and white. In my career, I had very little doubt. Very little doubt. In my interpersonal relationships with people, I had a lot of doubts.
Okay.
I was very afraid of other people.
How is that?
Work? Yeah. I don't know. It did. When it came down to the things that I knew how to, that I was good at, I had no doubt.
Yeah.
I believed in my ability to communicate. I believed in my ability to write. I believed in my ability to, get up on a stage and perform. There were certain things that I knew I was good at.
Yeah.
And I had no doubt. Interpersonal relationships was something I really struggled with for a lot of my life. And I think it is fundamentally comes down to the fact that I was very, very stressed about what people thought of me.
Yeah. And
very, very stressed about. I should say my father is autistic or is on the spectrum of autism. Never diagnosed, but it's very obvious. And I think it has given me, I am not on the spectrum, but it has given me a social fear about being misunderstood and about feeling weird in social situations. And I don't, it took me a very long time to really feel a part of and feel like I had friends who actually liked me for me. And so career-wise, great. But then what happened was, because careers happen with other people around,
yes,
right?
Yes, I was wondering.
Right, so what would happen is I would be great at the job that I had that was right here, and then everything around it, like all the politics, all of the thing where you had to interact with other people, I was terrible at, and so I would leave a lot of jobs because I didn't know how to deal with the people side of the job. And it got worse and worse and worse until I had a burnout, until I really I had in essence what is a nervous breakdown, because I couldn't understand how to be myself with other people.
Yeah, especially when performing.
Yes. And that is actually partially why I was so attracted to acting in the first place, was I could act like a normal person.
Yes.
And so what
I understand that.
Yes.
I feel that. I feel like, I don't know, there is some type of acting that I've have to do to
masks
be at work.
Yes.
I'm less stressed about it now, but I get that.
Yeah. So the journey that I went on up until my late 30s, it took me a long time, was I'm weird, I don't fit in anywhere. And I need to keep moving, so nobody, until somebody notices. It takes about 2 years for somebody to really notice that I don't know what I'm doing in terms of social aspects. Job, not an issue. And then, I had a nervous breakdown in essence, and was drinking a terrible amount, and had to, because of life and death, had to become an expert on myself, because otherwise I would have died.
Yeah.
And this is the journey. So this is the big, so I really refer to myself now as Lauren 2.0 in a way that is very profound, because up until I was 39, I was a complete stranger to myself. And I had to do some very serious therapy, research, self-assessment and diagnosis, using all sorts of tools to understand who I was, understand what my strengths were even outside of work. I had a good sense of what I was good at in terms of what people were willing to pay me for. Everything else was a mystery, and I didn't really understand.
Oh my God, I feel that too.
Right?
A lot of times I feel like I don't know myself beyond specific things, and then there's days that I'm like, oh no, I know myself. Here I am. Sure. And then there's days I'm like, who the fuck am I?
Right, and everybody goes through those days. The problem was I never knew myself.
Never,
and I was
ever.
Always in self-doubt, always. And it was killing me.
Yeah.
It was absolutely killing me, literally, because I was self-medicating.
Yes.
And so in order to get over all of this, I needed to break down everything I understood about myself.
Yeah.
You made a comment earlier, who am I if I'm not an American?
Yeah, who am I?
I had to go through who am I if I'm not angry? Because I was angry all the time. I was angry all the time.
Yeah.
And so I had to release anger and accept that a good thing was going to fill up the anger, the place where the anger had been, because it was such a part of my personality. I'm so much less angry now. It's such a beautiful thing.
I can tell, yes.
She was a part of me that I never learned how to process anger. And that was an extremely important thing that a lot of people don't know how to do, especially women. We aren't allowed to be angry. We aren't allowed to feel that kind of emotion. We're allowed to cry. We're allowed to be sad. But we're not allowed to be angry.
We have to be helpless.
Right.
But
So,
anger, I feel that too.
Yeah, we're not allowed to be angry.
Especially at men.
Right. And even bigger than individual men, we're not allowed to be mad at the patriarchy, and that is what the patriarchy is. Patriarchy is a system set up by men, even if the men who exist now had nothing to do with the way it was set up.
Yeah.
It was set up by men.
Yeah.
And we're in a system where male characteristics are rewarded and female are not.
Yeah.
In most cases. I mean, you have certain industries where it's okay to have female characteristics, but in general, especially again in STEM, male characteristics are the way forward.
Yeah.
As we talk about how women use male characteristic, we talk about the patriarchy and how that's a system of imposter syndrome as well.
And so, there is a lot of women feel directionless anger.
Yes.
Like that general anger, that generalized anger, and so they push it away because it's not directed at. It's not about anything.
Yeah.
And it is because they've run into the system.
Yeah.
They've hit the system. Where it is that way.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Where you're screaming at something, but there's nothing to scream. Like you said, it's like directionless, right? Like what I cannot be angry at my husband. I cannot be angry at my co-workers. I cannot be angry at my employer. Where am I putting this frustration?
Right.
That it's in me.
Right. Yeah. And I feel bad for the men in our lives because they take the brunt of that.
They take the brunt of that,
because they're in front of us being men.
Yes.
And sometimes they deserve it and sometimes they don't, but they get the brunt of it. So it sucks. And I try to be very clear with myself, and that is what it is it is really important to become an expert on yourself so that you can be clear, because shit still will happen. Yeah. You will still get the directionless anger, but I will say, oh, this is not about you. I'm sorry. This is not about you, but I'm just angry to her, and I just need to get it out. And when you're clear about the fact that it is this thing as opposed to this person in front of you, it avoids a lot of misunderstandings and useless fights.
Yeah, I have to say, like, kudos to our partners that are dealing with us, this part of us now. Yes. And I mean, maybe not because of their doing, but because of other doings. I think they're becoming also, it's part of them that is becoming even more sensitive and aware of us through this process.
For sure.
I find it quite beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
As long as it's, like, not toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really lucky now. My partner is extremely comfortable with talking about this stuff and communicative. I mean, he's British, so, there are some, like, I don't feel that. Like, I can't feel what you're talking about, but I understand that you are feeling it.
Yes.
Like, he validates my feeling, even though he's like, I'm British, I'm feeling impaired.
That's good.
Yeah. So, but I'm really lucky in that he will let me sort of be like, the patriarchy, and not be like, well, not all men,
Yes. It's not about you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make it about all men, for God's sake. Yeah. So that, but that is, I think it's really, really important to be an expert on yourself.
So, what is in store for Lauren 2.0?
Yeah.
What are we doing with the book? Where are we taking it?
Yeah. So the book actually started from an idea, some ideas for workshops. So what I actually want to do is get into workshops with people and start working through the shit, because
it is shit to work through.
Yeah. A book is great, and a book is a kind of a way to start the conversation, but it's hard work, man. It is hard work, and I don't really expect anybody to sit down and do the exercises in the book by themselves. Like, it's there. A lot of the exercises are there and can be done. They can be done, but it is difficult work. And I want to do this stuff. I want to do this. This is what I want to do
In partnership
with groups of people.
Yeah.
So the next step for me is, once the book comes out, November 9th, it will be the opening of a conversation to get people into workshops.
Love it.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to need this too.
Love it. Let's do it. I would love it.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for
I
having me.
will put all of the links to Lauren's website, her book, and anything else, her social media, and anything else that she wants to share with the audience. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This was lovely. Thank you.
Woo! There you have it. I hope you liked this episode, and please don't forget to share, like, comment on the podcast link. Tell all your Nexus and friends and family about it. Submit a recommendation for guests at www.unboss.io. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Donate by clicking on the anchor link and help me continue to make great episodes. You can find all this information on www.unboss.io. See you next time. Oh, that was good.